Hey guys, and welcome back to Greg's Fish Room. Today we are going to talk about this really neat bucket behind me. In fact, I don't have one of them, I have 20 of them. And I consider this to potentially be one of the most useful buckets for aquatics and aquarium keeping. Everyone loves their 5-gallon bucket, but nothing beats a 17-gallon bucket. There are so many more things you can do with a bucket that is a little bit larger. And we're going to talk about those things and clean these up today. So come along with me and learn how to be a better aquarist. Alright, so first things first, what in the heck are we looking at today? This is a 17-gallon bucket. It is a locking lid style bucket, so you can see there's a plastic lock here and a locking ring, and then it has the lid itself. These are stacking lids so that multiple buckets can stack on top of one another. And then we have the bucket itself, which doesn't have a handle, but it does have a reinforced top lip so that there won't be any deformation of the bucket when it's full of water. And this is what it looks like. It is roughly 20 inches in diameter by about 12 or 13 inches deep, depending on how high you fill it. And that would put it right around a 17-gallon bucket. So this is roughly 3 times the amount of water that you would have in a 5-gallon bucket, and I think it's just neat. I think it's great. I think there are so many things we can do with this bucket. But how did I find it? Well, I've been on a hunting spree for something similar to this for actually a few years, and I finally found it on Facebook Marketplace, of all places. There's a lot of great stuff on Facebook Marketplace. And here's how the story goes. There's this guy in Rhode Island who I guess works for a company that makes tape. And so the rolls of tape have a, I guess like a wax coating on the roll of tape. And that's what was in these buckets. So typically, when you find buckets like this, they are used for industrial type purposes, and these are used buckets. So this is not a food safe bucket. It didn't have, you know, rice wine vinegar or pickles or anything like that in it. It's far too large for like a wet ingredient that would probably max out at a 5 or 6 gallon bucket. Because this is 17 gallons, it's most likely going to have some sort of chemical or something like that for industrial type uses. And so I wanted to be very careful not to pick up something that was going to harm my fish. And so when I heard that it had wax in it, I was a little cautious because I didn't want to pick up something that could potentially harm the fish. And so I went ahead and picked them up, and they don't look that bad. In fact, if you sort of like rub your hand on the inside of it, you can see there's like a little bit of white residue. And so I think essentially what this was it was either a powdered wax or a pelletized wax. And you know, once these things are empty, they're essentially tossed out or, you know, resold for pennies on the dollar. And so they're very hard to come by otherwise. So this is what we got. We've got 20 of these things, and the first thing I want to do before using these for fish is to make sure, be absolutely certain that it's completely fish safe and that there's no wax, powder or residue attached to the buckets themselves. So how are we going to do that? Well, I was told that one possible solution is isopropyl alcohol. And so essentially the idea is that the alcohol will break the bonds between the wax and the plastic bucket, and so it will be able to wash right out. And so that's what I want to try to do. As it stands, like I can't see a heavy coating of wax. It doesn't even smell bad. It doesn't smell like it's toxic or anything like that, but I know that there's a coating in there. So what I'm gonna do is a little test here. And so what I've done is I've taken paraffin wax and I've just dripped it inside of this yogurt cup, and it's a colored wax so we can see it. And before I start working on all of these buckets, I've got 20 of them, I want to make sure that this actually works. I want to make sure that the isopropyl alcohol is able to actually remove the wax from these buckets. And if it is, we're going to go to town on all of these buckets and wipe down the interiors of them and then flush them out with water, let them sit, drain them, fill them up again and drain them again, just to make sure that everything's out. Okay, so for this test, I'm just going to use a paper towel here, and this is 91% isopropyl alcohol. I'm doing this outside just in case it makes a mess, in case it smells funky. We don't want this in the house. So we got our isopropyl alcohol, and we've got our cup of dripped wax to simulate any of the wax that might be stuck to the insides of the bucket. And if this works, I'm going to step it up to using some rags, something a little bit heavier duty. And so as I'm moving this on the inside of this, I can definitely feel the wax starting to pop off. So all the little pieces of wax are literally just popping off the sides of the container. Some of it appears to be a little bit harder to remove, but if I put a little bit of pressure on it, it seems like it comes off fairly well. So just within, 60 seconds of doing this, I've got little wax flakes all over the place, and I would say more than 50% of the wax has come out. And I can actually feel the alcohol breaking the bond, and in some cases, if I'm like rubbing the same spot over and over again, I can see it disintegrating the wax, and it completely goes away. So much like a stain on a dish or something like that, if you work it a little bit, it completely disappears. So I would say that's a great sign that the isopropyl alcohol is going to work within these buckets. Now, the wax isn't melted onto the bucket like this is, so this is actually maybe a more extreme case than what we have to deal with. All we need to do is be able to lift up that powder and collect it in a rag and then flush it out. So I think that's going to work, and I think that's what we're actually going to do. So let's step this up. We will use a nice fresh clean rag, and what we're going to do is we're going to use that isopropyl alcohol, and we're going to go over all of the interior surfaces of the bucket itself with a healthy amount of isopropyl alcohol here. And once that's done, we'll just go over to the hose and we'll flush it out real good. We'll let it sit in the sun, and then we'll dump it out, rinse it, and refill it, just to make sure that everything's flushed out. So yeah, it smells like a doctor's office. I'm glad I did this outside. All right, so essentially, as I'm doing this, I can feel little spots of resistance on the sides of the bucket, and so because of that, I can tell where that wax might actually be in contact with the bucket. But otherwise, it looks like it's pretty clear, and I'm not really feeling anything else. So after about a minute or so, I'm sure this is going to be good to go. And we're going to do the same thing with the lid as well, where it may have come in contact with the wax. So let's clean these up, and then we'll bring them over to the hose to rinse them out. All right, there's one bucket done. We spent about 2 minutes cleaning the inside of each bucket. So I'm fairly certain now that all of the residue has been removed from the inside of this bucket with the alcohol. So we're gonna go ahead and do the lid, and then we'll go wash these out with water. All right, and here are our buckets after they've been soaked and rinsed. I've got, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 gallons of water in the bottom of each one. I went ahead and sprayed the sides, wiped them out, and I'm just letting them sit now. And I'll probably let them sit for a few hours, and I'll dump them out, rinse them again thoroughly, and then they should be good. And I'll do the same thing with the lids over there. So yeah, this is what they look like. Now, because this is 17 gallons, I don't think I could completely fill one of these and move it very easily, and I don't think I would want to. However, because it has this band on the top here, it shouldn't deform at all when it's completely full, and it should make a really good container for some fish and some projects. Now, I've had this container for a few years. I actually got this from a company called, if we can pull this up, Grief or Gref Inc. And I guess these are made in Kentucky, potentially. I have no idea what brand these are. They don't have any markings on them. So the ability to get more of these is, I think, just going to come from the secondary market, empty containers that people are using, like these ones. But I think that's okay. I've got 20 of them, so I've got plenty for my needs for the foreseeable future. So what exactly am I planning to do with these? Well, we'll go take a look at one of these over at the pond in a minute. I've got one with a goldfish in it for some inspection, but I think these would make really good liners for the inside of some mini ponds, potentially. Like if you take a half a whiskey barrel and then put this as an insert, I think that could work really well for a pond. I've used this one in the past for hatching newt eggs. And so it was really good at that. I was able to hatch probably close to 1,000 eggs in a container like this. This one's a little bit bigger. It's probably about 20 gallons, about the same dimensions, just taller than these ones are, 17 gallons. I've also used this one in the past for quarantine. All I need to do is pop a sponge filter in there, a seeded sponge filter, and these sorts of containers make great quarantine containers. So I'm looking forward to using these as breeding containers, hatching containers, quarantine containers, and maybe some outdoor ponds in the near future. I like that they're white, so it's easy to tell if it's clean or dirty on the inside. It's really easy to see your fish on the inside. They also probably make pretty good containers for selling things like goldfish or rice fish, sort of like the top-down type of fish that you view in ponds and whatnot. They make good selling containers for those at fish shows, potentially, as well. So that's a look at all of the buckets as they're currently sitting. Well, let's go pop over to the pond and we'll take a look at one that I've been using for the last week. All right, we're over by the pond now, and this is one of those 17-gallon buckets that I actually cleaned out about a week ago, and for the past week I've been testing it with smaller fish than this. I put some pilot fish, some test fish in it inside in my basement fish room, and they did fine. They did just fine for a whole week. So I'm assuming that means that these are sufficiently clean and non-toxic for fish. I still don't think I would consider them food grade or put human food in them, but for fish, seems like they're just fine and happy. So this is one of those tubs, and the water here came straight out of the pond. You can see it is full of tannic acids. I have quite a bit of driftwood, some large pieces of driftwood here in the pond, and in the greenhouse connected to it I have a lot of leaves that are slowly decomposing, and that's a food source for my infusoria that I'm growing. So yes, the water is a little brown, but you know, I don't think the fish mind. So this is a goldfish that I've wanted to inspect for a while. This was actually a goldfish that I picked up from the Petco feeder goldfish section many years ago. I'd have to go back and look, but I got them for a 55-gallon chop and flip barrel video many years ago, and this is how big he's gotten. But noticeably, if you look, he's missing an eyeball, and so he's got one on the right side, but he doesn't have one on the left side. And as far as I can tell, he's been like this since I got him, since he was little. He just didn't have an eye. So this may be just a genetic defect, and that might be one reason he was sold as a feeder goldfish. But as you can see, he's doing quite well. He's survived several winters out here in the pond, and he's very lively, very active. He's a very good feeder. I will admit though, he was pretty easy to catch because I just went from his blind side. Sorry, little goldfish. But I just wanted to check him out, just check to see, you know, that eye socket, and just you know, see what it was all about. And I can definitely tell that it's been like that for quite a long time, and it looks like it may have been like that since he was very, very little. So yeah, I think he's in perfect health, and I just wanted to use this bucket as an opportunity to inspect him. Later this month, I'm going to a wild collection trip, and I think I'm going to bring 1 or 2 of these buckets with me and use them in a similar fashion, so that anything I can catch, I can sort of keep them in there for a bit, inspect them, and then decide what to do with them. So anyways, we're going to put this goldfish back in the pond, but that's a look at the bucket, cleaned out, ready to go. I'm sure you'll see plenty more about these buckets in future videos and future projects. So anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like, please subscribe, but also please check out Nature Forged Aquatics on Amazon. You can check out products like this, the Nature Forged Aquatics alder cones, which is a great product to add to your blackwater tanks, to your shrimp tanks, to your soft water aquariums. Provides natural tannins, allows you to naturally and slowly drop the pH in your aquariums. It's a great product. This is a 4-ounce bag. It has tons of cones in it. It will last you a very long time. It also helps support this channel because Nature Forged Aquatics is my brand. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later.